The next one in line on the maxilla is the maxillary premolars and molar, and this is probably one of the most frustrating views that we do in cats, because if we do the dog technique, what happens is the zygomatic arch, which is very prominent in cats, superimposes right over the teeth that we're trying to assess, which makes it almost impossible to detect disease in them. You'll read in literature about film placement with a sensor, which has some of the sensor on the top and some on the bottom, similar to like this. This is the intraoral technique, but it definitely doesn't work with DR sensors. DR sensors have an inactive area around the perimeter of the sensor, so it's actually a little bit smaller than it looks, and because it's so thick and rigid, it really doesn't make placement for this view successful. So what we're going to do for this view is we're going to do an extraoral technique. And this is the only one that I routinely do for DR sensors using the extraoral technique. So what you're going to do, in this case, I'm actually going to image the left maxillary premolars and molars for this view. So I'm going to put the plate on the outside of the cat's mouth, trying my best to keep it as straight as possible. And generally what you want to do is make sure the cat's mouth is wide open. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get a 1 mil syringe and just cut it in half so that it opens the mouth like that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tweak my film placement here. You want most of the sensor underneath the cat's maxilla, and if you can maintain the cat in a nice true parallel, it definitely makes the success rate of this view higher. Okay, so we got that mouth nicely wide open. The cat's laying on the sensor. Now what you're going to do with the cone is you're going to set it up initially as if you're going to be able to superimpose both those arcades. So, cat. So the cone would look similar to this. If I took the x-ray right now, both of those arcades, this one and this one, be superimposed over each other. So what I want to do is I want to tilt my cone so that it bypasses the top arcade and hits the bottom one. So if I look at my angle meter, I'm likely around 90, so it's at least 20-degree tilt. So I'm going to tilt it at least 20 degrees. It might be a little bit more, but what I'm trying to achieve is that the cone's going to bypass the top arcade, and I'm going to center at the arcade on the bottom, just like that. Okay, so if you take the x-ray and you look at the screen and that you see that both those arcades are superimposed, then what's happened there is you haven't done enough of the tilt with the cone. If you look at the x-ray and you see a prominent zygomatic arch, then what's happened is you've actually done too much of a tilt. So it's a little bit of a finicky view for sure. When you look at the x-ray, it looks much different than you're used to looking at. You just have to ignore all the arcade that's at the top of your screen and look at the one that's at the bottom, and that's the one that you were trying to isolate for this view.